making some veggie ramen. So beforehand, CCHS and I figured we would show you how to prep the veggies. So before we get too far into that, I am going to show a little bit about my station here and what we're going to use the different tools for. And of course, we have our veggies out, and with these, we obviously want to make sure that everything is rinsed and clean so that we don't have any dirt in our mushrooms. Um, so without further ado, so with my prep station here, I have my cutting board. I have a 6-inch chef's knife. I have a long paring knife, a spoon, and I'll get to this in a little bit, but I'm going to use that for my ginger. Then I have my meal prep bowls. So I'm going to start and just show you how we're going to prep some of our mushrooms. So these are baby bella mushrooms, and fun fact, baby bellas are just small portobello mushrooms. With these, we're going to want to cut the stem off and then just slice it nice and thin. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to turn this on its side, and this is called the claw technique. So what I'm doing here is I'm using my nails as a guard against the knife so that I have some stability and I'm not gonna cut my fingers at all. So I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to move the knife into it to cut that stem off. I'm actually going to save this stem because I'm going to use this later on for a nice broth, not for a ramen tonight, but maybe in a couple weeks when I make some nice veggie broth. So with this, it's the same tactic. So anytime I cut with my knife, I'm going to use this claw with my fingers like this, and I'm going to slice down and move the blade. So I'm going to put this nice rest against the cutting board. I'm actually going to put it so that the stem side is down for a little bit more stability. And I'm just going to slice in. Nice even slices. Keep that blade moving forward. Great. So with that, here's one. I'm going to do a couple more just to demo. And with these mushrooms, I'm going to put those in my bowl so that they are ready for my meal later. So again, I'm going to just cut the stem off. Fell apart a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to put it stem side down. I'm just going to cut nice, even slices. All right. Perfect. And I'll do one more just for good measure. Obviously, I'm going to cut up all the mushrooms that I have. For this recipe, I think that the recipe that we're using calls for 6 ounces. I like to use a little bit of creative liberty and just guesstimate how many mushrooms I'm going to be using. So I'm probably going to use close to 12 ounces for this because I like the mushrooms quite a bit. So there is a few mushrooms that I cut. Next, I'm going to move on to the green onions. Green onions and scallions are the same thing. They're labeled differently in every grocery store. And it's kind of interesting. So this is the bulb of the green onion. And if you let this continue to grow, this will actually become a fuller, like a full-grown onion. But we're just going to be using the green for this part, which is essentially from the root and up. So I'm going to cut a few at a time. And the recipe that I think that we're using today calls for these to be minced or thinly sliced when it comes to green onions. I'm not going to do that because we're going to use, the way that I'm going to cook these is saute them in with the mushrooms and then boil them in the broth, which will bring out some of that saltiness and some of the savoriness that comes with the green onions and the mushrooms. So I'm just going to cut these in 1-inch pieces, which will be plenty. It'll save us some time too. So if you see this, I'm using my chef's knife for this because I want to get that nice full follow through. So look at that. You can do a bunch at a time. And just make sure that you don't get your onion green roots in that. So that is all that is entailed there. Same with the mushrooms. Use some creative liberty. If you like stronger broths, you can use more onions and more mushrooms. I'm also going to be using some ginger here, sorry. And the ginger will bring out a little bit of spice to our broth. So I'm gonna throw this in. With these roots, you can discard them. Some people use these for broths like I'm doing with the mushrooms, but I tend to not. I usually just toss these because unfortunately we don't have compost where I'm at. So, so that is it for the green onions. Now I'm going to move on to the ginger. So for the ginger, I'm going to cut these into matchsticks. Then the first thing that you have to do with ginger, which can be kind of annoying, is cut this skin off. And to do that, so you can use a paring knife, but the problem with a paring knife is you end up going too far in to the ginger itself. So I'm just going to take this spoon here, and this is just a standard soup spoon. I'm going to break this this piece off, and this piece off. And I am going to just take this edge of the spoon, pull it along. You'll see there's a lot of flavor that comes in just under the skin, so we don't want to get rid of that too much. So don't go too deep here, but all you're doing is scraping that off. Great. And so if this is your first time skinning ginger, take your time with it, go easy on yourself. It can be a little frustrating, but this spoon technique saves you a lot of time. I also, I'll be saving these stems, but I'm only going to use this main part of the ginger. So, I'll use these later on, maybe in that broth that I was talking about. But for now, I'm just using this long central piece for the matchsticks. So, great. As you can see, don't forget the root here. I guess the whole thing's really a root, but it's what looks like the base. Great. So now you can see I have all my skin off here. And for this, I'm actually going to use this chef's knife just because I like that I can get that movement with the full blade and cut it into little pieces. So if we think of what a matchstick looks like, that's really what we're just trying to get with this. So to do that, we're going to cut it down into planks, and then we're going to cut those planks into smaller pieces. So without further ado, if I take this down, again, I always use that claw technique when I'm cutting my produce. It's safe and it provides me with more stability so that this isn't rocking around too much. So I'm just going to go down and let me show you how thick of a piece this is. It doesn't have to be perfect, particularly if you're just cooking at home and you're not too worried about the presentation. But it's just a fairly thin slice, maybe between 1/16 and 1/8 of an inch is fine. But if you go bigger, it's not really going to make the biggest deal in the world. So I'm just going to cut those planks, keeping that claw, cut it down. Great. When you get to the end here, it can be more unstable. I can still cut this with the claw just because I've done this a few times. But the alternate thing that you can do is put it on the side with that end and then go down and just cut this into the smaller pieces like this. So again, I'm using where the largest surface area is for stability here. So I'm just going to cut this into matchsticks. Now these aren't going to look perfect, but that's okay. But it's a little bit safer, particularly if you're not well practiced with cutting ginger. You don't really want to lose a finger doing this. So with my matchsticks here, I'm just going to place those in a bowl. So here, what I can do with the rest of this ginger that I like to do just to save time, particularly if I'm not too worried about having everything exact, is I just stack these together. I hold it down with that claw and just move down. And you'll see from this, now I have several of these nice planks, these matchsticks right in front of me. If you can see that, there we go. So with these, I'm just going to be throwing those in the broth. It'll be nice. All right, let me just wrap this up. And again, be careful when you get to the ends like that. I don't want to work too much, but I'm just going to cut these into slightly smaller pieces and move everything off to the side once you're done with it. So you don't cut too small, and then you should be good. All right, and I just get this one piece. All right, perfect. So here you'll see these are actually a little bit thick, but I'm not going to worry about it. We have these nice matchsticks, which will add a lot of flavor. And note that in the recipe that we're using, it doesn't call for ginger, but I will be taking a few, as I called them, creative liberties, one of which is the ginger. I'm also going to be incorporating miso, more mushroom, and more green onions. And all of those are to add just another level of spice that you wouldn't have in that broth otherwise. So I guess that is all for our prep. I hope everybody will be joining at 6 Eastern today. I'm on Mountain Time myself, so it'll be a little bit of an early dinner, but it will be good. It'll be a lot of fun conversation, and whether you're following along or just watching for fun, I hope to see you there. All right. Have a good day, everybody.